Atlanta.
What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everyone's doing well out there today. We're going to dive back into week 4 and find out what happened was. Now, typically this is me and Kyle doing this show together. Kyle had something come up, so you're stuck with just me here this afternoon. But like usual, we're doing the same things. We're going to talk about our studs, our stud players that dudded, our top misses, and our top hits from just last week. We're always trying to get better. We're always trying to improve, and you do that by identifying a few of the things that you missed on to try to make those adjustments moving forward, and that's what this show is all about. If you enjoy that type of content, do me a favor and hit that like button, but we're not going to waste a whole lot of time. Let's get right in to our studs. We're talking about studs who dudded this past week. Lamar Jackson, right off the top, right? Finished as quarterback 19. Disappointed a lot of people. Obviously, he's somebody you're starting each and every week, though. I think I got called an ass clown in the comments last week because I was told I had him ranked too low, and that's with me having a quarterback 3 on the week. Heck, at this point, I would have loved to see quarterback 3. I'm sure a lot of his owners out there would have too. Jalen Hurts, another guy, finished quarterback 15 overall. A little bit more of a down week. Najee Harris. The past work days of Najee Harris are over, and apparently now in Pittsburgh, the goal line running back is Kenny Pickett, because it's not going the way of Najee Harris, which is hard for his owners to see. We expected somewhat of a slow start from Najee, but if we're losing goal line carries to Kenny Pickett, it's going to be a riot up in here, right? What about James Robinson? We've talked, for weeks about James Robinson when the touchdown stopped. We're going to be disappointed. We kept riding that wave. The touchdown stopped. He disappointed. Jonathan Taylor not playing so well, but luckily it looks like we escaped a major injury. He has a chance to play in week 5. I know some of you are out there right now saying, I don't even know if I want him to play in week 5 at the way that he's producing, and I totally understand that, but this is not really the time to just trade away Jonathan Taylor for peanuts and just get something back in return. We're still trying to, get some value out of him. Don't give up too early. Dalvin Cook was a disappointment, but he still had 22 touches. Now, sure, he maybe not have been 100% healthy. We knew that going into the game, but we knew the volume was still going to be there. You never sit Dalvin Cook. If somebody would have told you before the game, hey, Dalvin's getting 22 touches, would you have sat him? No, probably not. Javonte Williams. Moment of silence for Javonte Williams, please. He has torn his ACL. He is done for the year, and I'm sure the doc will touch on that a little bit later in the week. Stephon Diggs only had one more target last week than Devin Singletary. That ain't going to cut it. How about Michael Pittman? Touchdowns aren't there because they're all going to the tight ends inside the red zone. That is not a good sign for Michael Pittman. Jalen Waddle had himself a down week. Remember, we had the Tua injury, though. Plus, Jalen Waddle was already nursing an injury coming into that game. Don't forget that as well. Kyle Pitts. Kyle did a film review on Kyle Pitts a couple weeks ago, and he said in that film review, it's for members only. That's probably why you don't see it on the channel unless you're a member. That he was very worried about Kyle Pitts in that film review a couple weeks ago. And we're starting to see it come to fruition. Now, the only silver lining here, if you want to call it a silver lining, is Cordero Patterson is now going on the short-term IR. Maybe this leads to more work for Pitts over the next few weeks. That's something to pay attention to. Darren Waller, just not going down the field as much anymore, more dink and dunk. Even with no Hunter Renfrow, not seeing big play Waller. And then Alvin Kamara torched a lot of people's hopes and dreams this weekend with a late-minute scratch in the London game, which was super early. Listen, on Saturday night, we live-streamed on his channel for like 3.5 hours, and then Kyle live-streamed for like another 2.5, 3 hours on the gaming channel after that. We didn't go to bed till like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. By the time we wake up, Alvin Kamara done screwed us, like he did with a lot of people, so that was really tough to see because there was really no warning of that coming prior to right before the game, that early game in London. So those are some of the bigger studs that dudded here in week 4. How about we head over to some of our misses now? And the first one up here on this list is going to be Carson Wentz. I had him as a low-end start. I said I wouldn't be surprised that the Dallas pass rush was able to get to Carson Wentz and really affect him, and that happened. Only had 170 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Cooper Rush had him as a sit. Guy continues to play really well. I mean, because he's playing so well and because they're winning ball games, they're not having to rush back Dak Prescott. 223 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions for Cooper Rush. Pretty solid day. Then we got Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who is starting to build some momentum. We talked about that being a very tough matchup for him going up against Philadelphia. Were we anticipating 5 turnovers, including 4 fumbles? No, absolutely. Hold on to the damn ball, Trevor. Just high and tight. Okay, high and tight, Trevor. Come on, Trevor. We need better than that from you, Trevor. Focus, Trevor. Come on. But yeah, got to credit the Philadelphia defense a little bit there. They were flying around the field. Rough day for Trevor Lawrence. Derek Carr, no touchdowns because they all went to Josh Jacobs. He stole all of them. Rashad Penny, he had himself a massive game, and I knew it. I had a feeling. We tell everybody to trust their gut, but I don't know if I trusted mine. I mean, here, take a look. But Penny has done historically well against the Lions in his career. It's still the Detroit Lions, right? The confidence just isn't there to start him this year. He hasn't done anything for me to say, oh, you know what? I want to put Rashad Penny in my lineup, but I will tell you this. He does have some of that dark horse sleeper factor going on this week where a lot of people could totally write off Rashad Penny, and this is a matchup in which he could come out and have a really big game. The confidence just isn't there. The trust isn't there for me to want to throw him into my lineup. And I'm not surprised. I just thought that maybe Kenneth Walker would be used a little bit more, but no, it was nothing but the Rashad Penny show. How about J.K. Dobbins? I had him as a sit and saying, hey, we need to see this guy get more volume, plus it wasn't a great matchup for him going up against Buffalo. He didn't do a whole lot yardage-wise, but found the end zone twice against the Bills. He was, a great play for those of you who put him in your lineup this week. Ezekiel Elliott, 21 total touches. Really can't afford to ever sit a running back that's getting 21 touches, especially in a game in which he should have played better. And Tony Pollard did absolutely nothing. What about Antonio Gibson of the Washington Commandos? He had 16 touches, which isn't bad. Didn't do a whole lot with it, and now we're getting even closer and closer to Brian Robinson returning. Not a good showing for Antonio Gibson. What about Kareem Hunt? He is just not overly involved in this offense for whatever reason. You can tell this offense needs more playmakers, but he's not getting the pass work that a lot of people, myself included, really expected. Everything's really going the way of Nick Chubb, which, praise the Lord, I absolutely love that for sure, but I just don't understand the lack of usage, the lack of ceiling lately here with Kareem Hunt. How about Amari Cooper? 1 catch for 9 yards against the Atlanta Falcons. Like, where did all his production go over the last couple weeks? Not a whole lot of looks there for Amari Cooper. Drake London saw 7 targets, which is kind of where we had him pegged for the week. But for only 2 receptions and 17 yards? That's not enough. Terry McLaurin, 6 targets, 2 receptions, 45 yards. Difficult matchup for him going up against Dallas, but still expected something a little bit more than that. A whole lot of targets going to these receivers, but not a lot of receptions, not a lot to show for it. And that's really concerning because even the next guy on the list, Christian Kirk, saw 9 targets last week. That's exactly what you want. That's exactly why we're starting Christian Kirk. 9 targets a week, cool. 2 receptions, at least they were big plays, 60 yards. But Jamal Agnew is stealing the touchdowns. That's not what we want to see. Devontae Smith coming off a huge performance. 4 targets for 3 catches and 17 yards. That was a disappointment. Deontay Johnson. We've talked about Deontay Johnson a couple times here over the last month or so about somebody we need to start thinking about selling quickly. And now may be that time if you haven't already, because it really looks like Kenny Pickett coming in here for the Pittsburgh Steelers could start relying a whole lot more on George Pickens than he does Deontay Johnson, and he could turn into a headache. Only 4 targets, 2 receptions, and 11 yards. Allen Lazard, he was kind of the guy in Green Bay this past week, thanks to a drop from Romeo Doubs there in the end zone. Doobs, by the way. What about Allen Lazard finishing with 8 targets, 6 receptions, 116 yards? David Njoku, he had 7 targets, he had 5 receptions, and 73 yards. We had him as a start. Not a bad day for a tight end, right? We also lost a fumble. Those lost 2 points kind of hurt a lot of people. Mo Cox, Mo Problems. Mo Alley Cox, the tight end of the Indianapolis Colts. 6 receptions for 82 yards and 2 touchdowns. He probably wasn't in very many lineups. Evan Ingram, who was a fringe start for us last week. 1 target, 1 catch, 16 yards. No bueno. Will Dissly, he just continues to catch balls in Seattle. 4 targets, 4 receptions, 39 yards, but the big one was a touchdown. So he was another miss for us here as well this past week, but we had a lot of great hits as well. Probably one of the better weeks so far of the season. I don't want to say that week 4 was great for everyone all around, but I have to admit, and maybe you agree with me here down below in the comment section, that I feel like week 4 should have been what we saw in week 1, right? Like that's kind of like the starting point, and then we should build off of this, because week 4 was definitely better overall from a fantasy football perspective than maybe the first, 3 weeks of the season. So let's go through a few of our hits now. And the first one's going to be Marcus Mariota of the Atlanta Falcons. Jake, how was he a hit? He had a horrible game. It's because I told people to sit him last week, and a lot of people did not agree with that. They wanted to start Marcus Mariota, and I said, listen, with the lack of rushing upside week after week after week, I'm getting concerned. And then we lose Cordero Patterson. We still don't see more rushing upside from Marcus Mariota, so he was a sit. That was correct. Geno Smith. This one feels pretty good. I'm not going to lie. I don't know if too many people last week told people to start Geno Smith. I don't know. I don't watch anybody else's show. This one, it does feel good, though, because I know that there was a few members that, said something to us on Discord that said, hey, really appreciate the heads up on Geno Smith. I started him, and he absolutely crushed it for me this week. Matt Ryan. I keep seeing people say, hey, Matt Ryan is washed. Dude had 356 yards passing and 2 touchdowns to 1 interception. Has had multiple good games here this season. Quarterback 12 overall last week. I know he's not throwing to Michael Pittman. I know Jonathan Taylor is struggling. But that doesn't mean that Matt Ryan is trash. It's just going other places. Fantasy-wise, he's still been somewhat solid. How about Russell Wilson? This one feels good as well. I had somebody this past week tell me that I have lost all credibility and that my channel should be banned from fantasy football platforms because I suggested that you start Russell Wilson. How did that turn out? How does that taste in your mouth? Because Russell Wilson had himself his best game of the season. Josh Jacobs. Good things happen when you give the ball to Josh Jacobs. We had him as a start as well. Were we expecting 144 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns against the Denver Broncos? No, not that much. But we've talked about here for a few weeks that if they can just commit volume to Josh Jacobs, he's been playing so well, he just wasn't getting consistent volume. He got it. He produced. Hopefully that stays. Dameon Pierce, he was another hit for us last week. Also a hit on Prize Picks. One of the players that I said pick the over on. Saw that big play potential. Had 131 yards on the ground and a touchdown against a poor banged up defense there for the Chargers. How about Clyde Edwards-Helaire with 20 touches, 2 touchdowns. One of them was like a jump shot pass from Patrick Mahomes that just fell right in the hands of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That was great to see. Damian Harris continues to be a 50-50 split in this backfield, but he's getting the touchdowns, which is great, and he still looks really good. He's passing the eye test in this offense. Really going to, depend on how long are we without Mac Jones. That's something to pay attention to. Breece Hall, I mentioned that this would be the week that he scores that touchdown. He did, and now he's dominating the touches in that backfield as well, out-touching Michael Carter 19-11. James Conner was a hit, also because I had him as a sit. 3.7 yards per carry in an offense that's continually trailing and having to throw the ball when James Conner isn't getting a lot of passing looks is going to be a problem here in the near future until Arizona starts playing better football. Miles Sanders, about damn time. 29 touches for Miles Sanders. Everybody, round of applause. Nick Sirianni, great job. 150 plus total yards and 2 touchdowns. And I love Miles Sanders. We've talked about Miles Sanders for years. Miles Sanders has never been the problem. It's the consistent touches. It's the volume. It's Nick Sirianni. When you commit to Miles Sanders, good things are going to happen. And that was a huge game for people this past week. What about DK Metcalf? He had 10 targets, 7 receptions, and 149 yards. Plus, he got to ride a cart to the locker room to take a dump. I mean, he wanted to avoid the clinch walk, and that right there is hashtag legend if I've ever heard of it. DK Metcalf with Geno Smith is still a thing, and I'm actually liking what I'm seeing there in Seattle. Brandon Cooks, he's just too good to hold down for too long. We knew at some point they were going to involve him more. That happened this past week. 7 targets, 7 receptions, 57 yards, and a touchdown. Corey Davis was a start for us here this week, and it looks like he's still one of the top options for Zach Wilson. He led all wide receivers in targets with 7, had 5 catches for 74 yards and a touchdown. Marquise Hollywood Brown, despite, a lot of reports prior to the game that he was going to be limited, he was questionable to play, looked pretty healthy to me. 11 targets, 6 receptions, 88 yards, and a touchdown. Chris Olave was a hit. We had him as a start this past week. Kind of had to be, though, right? No Michael Thomas, no Alvin Kamara. That one was somewhat easier to see. Jarvis Landry was banged up as well. He had 7 targets, 4 receptions, 67 yards, and a touchdown. Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy had them both as starts. If I'm starting Russell Wilson, we're probably starting Sutton and Jeudy. They had solid games. They both found the end zone. Hayden Hurst continues to be a tight end that may not get a lot of volume, but they're utilizing him in the red zone, and he's just somebody to pay attention to. How about Dalton Schultz? We had him as a sit last week, and we said, listen, we love Dalton Schultz in the preseason, but the first week back off of injury, we're not going to start Dalton Schultz just yet. That worked out. He didn't do a whole lot. Had TJ Hawkinson as an early week start, and boy, did he not disappoint, right? No Amon-Ra, no DJ Chark, no DeAndre Swift. 12 targets, 8 receptions, 179 yards, and 2 touchdowns for the Hawk. I even wore my incredible Hawk shirt on the Saturday night live stream because we were hoping for big things, and boy, did that happen. And then lastly, Gerald Everett, tight end for the Chargers. He continues to do well without Keenan Allen. 6 targets, 5 receptions, 61 yards, and a touchdown. Another serviceable tight end that we're taking advantage of here so far in this young season. Now, obviously, we talk hundreds of players a week, but these were our top hits and misses from this past week, and we want to make sure we still take time to cover these. We are men enough to come back on camera after the fact and tell you what we missed on. Not a whole lot of people do that nowadays, especially in this space, and that's going to be something we continue to do each and every week. If you appreciate that, do me a favor, though, hit that like button. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Things are trending up in the right direction. Sure, it was a rough start for so many people in fantasy football all throughout the industry, but don't worry, things are going to get better, and we are here for it, and we're looking forward to it. Leave those comments down below if you have other questions. There's a ton of interactive members in this community that are constantly talking down below in the comment section, and we love to see the community built that way. So leave those comments down below, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to get out of here for the day. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day, a great week, and we'll talk to you later.